And now it's time for us to discuss more of these headlines in simple keywords with Adam joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Lena. Snowing once again.
Why the sigh? It's winter. We're expecting snow.
I'm sighing because I actually washed my car yesterday and now it's all become pointless.
If it makes you feel any better, you're in the right company. On Monday, I got my car cleaned and yes.
Ah, well.
Well, what can you do?
It's a bit annoying when that happens, isn't it?
I'm sorry.
It's fine. I mean, it was bound to get dirty anyway, wasn't it?
It's a snowy morning, folks. So for our local listeners, be extra careful on the roads. We advise you to keep the weather updates handy as you commute. Let's jump into our first keyword of the day.
ICBM doubts.
So Kim Yo-jong, the sister of North Korea's leader, has issued a statement criticizing those who question the regime's progress in its satellite and long-range ballistic missile development. Of course, South Korean experts and otherwise have said that it's not necessarily being shoot up at the right angle for it to be called a success.
Right, so there were a number of issues that these analysts were taking issue with, and that's why she took issue with these defense analysts' analysis, who said the low-resolution images of Seoul and Incheon taken from the North Korean test satellite demonstrated the kind of shortcomings of North Korean reconnaissance technology. She said, quote, so-called experts were so keen on finding fault with others that they could not but make such senseless words, and she did use other kind of profanities in the process as well. The North claimed its important final stage test of rocket Sunday was part of its military reconnaissance satellite project and made public those two photos presumed to be taken from a mock satellite. Some experts here said the quality of the imagery is too poor. And that's why Kim said it is inadequate and imprudent to assess the North satellite development capabilities and relevant preparations with two photos alone. She actually claimed the images came from a test use camera, and suggesting the choice of a less advanced device was kind of deliberate. Kim hinted that a more powerful camera would be installed on the regime's first military reconnaissance satellite, which North Korean state media said would be launched into orbit April next year. So we'll have to wait until then if any improvements are made. She also condemned those who question whether the North has mastered the atmospheric re-entry technology for its intercontinental ballistic missile. She hinted at the possibility that the North will fire an ICBM at a normal angle for the verification of its related technology, which, of course, would put the continental United States within aim as well. Right. So, of course, that is an area for concern if that threat does happen to become true. Kim also blasted South Korean statements that condemned the illegal nature of North Korean satellite tests under UNSC resolutions. Meanwhile, in a separate statement, Pyongyang's foreign ministry also blasted Japan's recent announcement of this revision to its defense strategy that includes this counter-strike capability that was in response to North Korea's growing missiles. So again, more tensions.
In line with their military modernization goal, it seems North Korean provocations was plenty this year. So in related to our first keyword of the day, this is our second pick.
UNSC resolution.
So the U.S. has reportedly shared with the UN Security Council a presidential statement condemning the North's ICBM launches. So what's the latest, Adam?
Right. The keyword should have been a presidential statement because it is slightly different, so I do apologize for that. But yes, the presidential statement reportedly reads that the UNSC strongly condemns the ICBM launches, which are violations, it claims, against UNSC resolutions. And it also reportedly urges the North to halt its weapons programs and return to nuclear talks. These are all based on reports citing a source familiar with the issue. So nothing confirmed at the moment, so do take it with a grain of salt. But a presidential statement, just for note, doesn't require a unanimous vote as a resolution would, but only a majority vote to be passed. But of course, it doesn't have any legal significance like a resolution does. But it is still a sign of pressure on the North. So it's basically saying that the UNSC is united in its push to kind of bring the North back to the dialogue table. But of course, with the resolution, there's always been problems because it requires a unanimous vote. China and Russia are usually the countries with veto-wielding powers to actually exercise their vetoing powers. Now, the US, meanwhile, says it plans to exclude humanitarian assistance from its sanctions on the north as well. Tensions are set to rise once again as the US deployed B-52 bombers and F-22 stealth jets to conduct drills with South Korean forces in another show of force against North Korea. Those took place in waters just south of Jeju Island. The US and the South Korean jets, the US F-22 jets were deployed in South Korea for the first time in 4 years, and they will stay throughout this week. So while they're here, it seems like more saber rattling from North Korea will continue.
And let's move on to the economy section. This is our third keyword of the day.
Inflation.
So Korea's central bank says the country's consumer inflation will remain around 5% for some time and then gradually ease. But it did caution that domestic and global factors are raising uncertainties about how fast prices will slow. So the timing of which we don't seem to be able to predict, of course.
Right, so it's quite some vague wording by the Bank of Korea and its governor. Lee Chang-yong says the need to concentrate monetary policies on fighting inflation is important. He cited that consumer price growth is expected to remain above the bank's target inflation of 2% next year, which I think that was pretty much well expected. A lot of analysis and reports are suggesting that. He was speaking at a news conference following the release of the bank's biannual inflation assessment report. He also said Korea might be nearing a recession, with the economic situation in the first half of next year projected to be difficult. He added the implementation of central bank policy to tame inflation could aggravate the recession if the bank responds too late, but market trust could be lost if the bank responds too early. He said he is taking into consideration the economy, the exchange rate, and employment. He said the BOK will respond to inflation by reviewing economic indices, the pace of economic slowdown, and changes in the benchmark rates of key economies, ideally probably the US Fed. He said the bank will also carefully look into adjustments in real estate prices due to a rise in interest rates, as well as a possible deterioration in financial stability and unexpected side effects that could follow. He also noted that it is too early to discuss rate cuts at this point, and that the Monetary Policy Board will need more clear evidence of declining inflation in the mid to long term before they actually start discussing a cut. But for now, it seems not just in Korea, but for the US as well, and pretty much major economies, interest rate hikes are something that we're going to be continuing to see well into the new year.
All right, let's move on to our fourth keyword of the day.
Budget in limbo.
Political limbo. Rival parties are still locking horns over next year's budget. We're on December 21st. We've already passed the proposed deadline several times, in fact. Will we see some progress?
Well, there seems to be a kind of an unfortunate, repeated kind of scenario that we see with every budget bill that happens, and a lot of political wrangling and bickering usually never sees the deadline actually being met when it comes to budget bills, despite which government is in power. But there is only a week and a half left. We'll have to see if they do come to some sort of agreement, but rival parties are yet to break the impasse on the plan, which is worth 639 trillion won. There's only 10 days, as I mentioned, left in the year. People Power Party floor leader Chu Ho-young expressed regret over the lack of progress, even after the National Assembly missed the constitutional deadline. He urged the Democratic Party to actively cooperate in state affairs. He criticized the opposition for calling to scrap around 500 million won to operate a unit overseeing the police under the Interior Ministry, as well as a personnel information management team under the Justice Ministry, stressing that both were legally established. DP floor spokesperson Oh Young-hwan refuted the PPP's claims, saying his party has accepted the parliamentary speaker's arbitration proposal, which it deems to be illegal to run the units with reserve funds. And Prime Minister Han Duck-soo has called for the swift passage of the budget bill, saying a further delay could adversely impact state affairs and aggravate difficulties in the economy and public livelihoods. But the PPP does say it will rejoin the parliamentary probe into the Itaewon tragedy starting today after a meeting with victims' families. That's because they met with the families of the victims who kind of vented their grievances over the squabbling in Parliament over the investigation into the tragedy. So they weren't really happy with whether the ruling party members are going to be part of this parliamentary probe or not, being kind of a bargaining chip with the opposition DP when it comes to the budget bill. So they want those issues to be separate. The PPP did threaten to, or it did withdraw from that parliamentary probe because of this whole wrangling over the budget bill. But of course, after meeting with the families, they've had a change of mind.
All right, but the tug of war doesn't seem to be over just yet. We'll keep tabs on it because, as you've said, only 10 days left in the year, and ideally you would want the budget bill to pass before the year arrives, right?
Because it is for the new year, that's right.
But as you've said, this is not unprecedented. It's actually quite frequent. All right, let's move on to our last keyword of the day.
Winning approval.
President Yoon is again pushing for reforms in labor, education, and pension, and appealing to young people to help achieve his goal because, as we mentioned on the segment 2, these kinds of reform, reframing, and shaking of the status quo is quite unpopular. What's the latest?
That's right. So he is seemingly trying to accelerate his kind of push and campaign for these reforms and creating more awareness around it. And now he's targeting younger people. That's why he invited some 200 young people in their 20s and 30s in a meeting or an event with the First Lady Kim Gun-hee as well at the former presidential building of Cheongwadae, the guest house of Yongbin-gwan. And Yoon again asked for the support of young people in pushing through with key reforms in labor, education, and pension. Now, according to a Real Meter survey on Yoon's approval rating, there has been a sharp increase in approval by people in their 20s, especially, gaining almost 10 percentage points compared to the previous week. He seems to be kind of using this momentum and kind of trying to create more awareness around his push for these reforms in these three sectors. Now, in this event or this in the event, he shared his government's blueprint for such reforms. For labor reform, he stressed the need for 4 areas in particular: flexibility, fairness, safety, and legal protection. He did note that all the planned reforms that he had may not actually be achieved within his tenure as president, hence why he is urging the young people to help continue the efforts after his presidency is over. So, yeah, we'll have to see what other kind of events and campaigns he has lined up in trying to push with these reforms.
You're right. I mean, managing expectations is also important. These are long-term goals, reforming labor, education, and pension sectors. I mean, I think every government knew that there was a sense of urgency. Now, to push through with it is an entirely different set of priorities. I'm hearing a squeak in behind you, so I'm going to let you go.
I don't know where that's coming from. I do apologize. That is out of my reach. I think it's coming from outside.
Is it the wind?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. I have earphones on, so I couldn't hear it clearly, but I do apologize if it was a distraction.
No problem, Adam. Thank you very much for this morning's coverage. I'll see you tomorrow.
Stay safe on the road. See you tomorrow.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.